So we're on the passenger side now, and Devin's just repeating exactly the same process. We've moved the jack over onto this side, and now the shock goes in. So the bottom part goes in first, and then he uses a bolt to kind of hold that in place while so he uses a bolt to hold that in place, and then at that point kind of pushes it down over here so that he can get it installed on the top. So not a lot of room at the top here. If you're looking at that, there's just not a lot of room to actually work and get that fastened or put that bolt in at the top to secure that. But he's jacking it up right now to get that to fit on there. And so when you're jacking this up, you go all the way until that bushing hits, right? That's what you're watching for?
Yep.
You got your finger right there?
Yeah, and that'll, especially once I do get it there, if you can see up top above the washer, there's not a whole, there's like 1 or 2 threads showing, so you kind of need to push the bushing up and the shock up as much as you can just to get enough, you can engage the threads.
So you expose enough thread to put that bolt on?
Yep. Yeah, there we go.
Okay.
Yeah, so that helps to, like, you can push, like, try to clamp with a couple fingers too to, in order to spin the nut on there, kind of compress the bushing more.
Very cool. All right, so we're setting up the front here, and Devin, what is interesting about doing the front? Anything at all?
I mean, nothing too special about putting it back together. Just kind of the reverse of how we got everything out. I left the transmission jack under the ram on the driver's side. That'll let me slip this in.
Okay.
Like really easy, a lot easier than the old ones came out.
All right.
But yeah, so there's plenty of room.
Oh, very nice.
Now.
So you wouldn't do the driver's side first on this side, would you?
No, I definitely. Driver should be the first out, last in.
Last in.
Yep.
Okay. So
Yep.
just exactly reverse order
Yep.
of
Yep.
how you did that.
Yeah, and just with the KDS, yeah, keeping that jacked up is what is helping it over here. If we put the other side in, that just limits our up travel, so
Okay.
help get this side down a little bit more.
Very nice. Yeah, you've got tons of room here.
Oh,
You
yeah.
can wiggle it around. You can do whatever you want.
Yeah, and actually, if I take this out and lower that the jack again, and kind of let it rest as low as it's gonna go. Guarantee I won't be able to get this in. Like,
Okay, so that's a
we'd
good
have to quiet
example
it.
of what would happen if you actually lowered that jack on that side.
yeah, because we'd have to like try to pry
Okay.
down, push it in, and yeah, you just go up a little bit on this, and fire in.
Yeah. So Devin's jacking up this side again here just to put that passenger shock in. Without doing that is, I mean, you could force it, but it wouldn't be quite as easy to get the shock in as it is if it's jacked up. So the way he's doing this is installing this exactly in the reversed order that he took everything out. So the passenger side is where we're at right now, and that actually goes in first. And you can see how much room he has in here just from the fact that he's got that jack on that other side. So
Well, I like to finger time these 3 top mount bolts first.
okay.
Just because if you put the lower in first, and then these, it's a lot harder to line up, whereas now you have all the wiggle room and you can
Okay.
move the coil over where you want it in order to get in here.
All right. So you want to try to put in the top ones first, and then the,
Yep.
the bottom, because it can pivot, is easier to get that last bolt in.
Yep. And then sometimes it is a little lower, so oh yeah, I'm not strong enough for that. The ones without kitty, it says you can use your thigh to.
Oh, okay.
We'll have to go down just a little bit on this to let that arm travel back upward.
All right.
A little more again.
So Devin had to lower this jack a little bit just to get that last bolt in. You can see it goes in fine now, but if he hadn't lowered that a little bit, he'd have been fighting with that because of the KDSS system. All right.
And then now I can do the. Now completely take out the jack. I might have to do the same trick. I'll put the not the coilover up top. I might have to jack this back up just to get the eyelet to line up
Okay.
on the bottom here. But we'll see. Sometimes I can be sometimes I can be strong enough to lift that by hand.
Oh, wow. It went
Yeah, the
right in.
driver's side, you always have plenty of room up front.
So Devin didn't have to really mess around with this jack to do the driver's side. Driver's side is always just a little bit easier. So what he's going to do now is do the same thing, put the 3 bolts at the top, and then once those are in, he'll focus on swinging in the last, or swinging it around to get that last bolt in at the bottom. But you may have to, at that point, play with the jack perhaps to get that hole
see, it's-
aligned.
Lower arm is a little too low. So I can either see if I'm strong enough. Oh yeah, I can do that.
All right.
Alright, so now I can definitely get this out of the way.
That red looks sharp on those shocks.
Oh yeah, I love the color.
Yeah.
So now we can get the control arms in. You kind of do either of these at different stages. I like to get the coil or the up control arm out first so that it's not in the way of anything. Like otherwise, you have to like kind of put it up out of the way.
Okay.
Whereas if you just take the stock arms out, take out the stock coilovers, replace the coilovers, and then put the new up control arm in, it's a lot easier, not fighting anything,
Okay.
nothing's in the way.
So when you disassemble, you remove the control arm.
Yep.
And then you remove the shock.
Yep. And then shock first, up control arm.
Okay,
last.
so the opposite again of
Yep.
putting it back in. All right, very cool.
And one thing you see a lot of people mess up with, the washers that come with the SPC arms are cupped. I don't know how easy it is to tell, but this side bulges out a little more.
Okay.
You want that to be against the bushing of the arm. You don't want it cupping around it, because
okay.
then it'll rub here and you'll get noises.
All right.
There should be, I think there are, it is mentioned in the directions of the SPC kit, but people still always.
Yeah, who likes to read directions
Yeah,
anyway?
right.
People prefer to watch video.
Yep. So always make sure you have a gap around the edge, and that the cup side is facing away.
Okay.
So feed one in. Okay. Definitely, always make sure that you tuck it underneath the ABS line. Made that mistake before and have to
Take
pull it
the
all
whole thing
apart.
off
Yeah.
again. Yeah, that would suck.
Yes, I'll feed the bolt through the bushing until line it up with it's the hole in the tower here. For the most part, you can feed it through by hand. And once it gets to the opposite side,
Oh, so that goes in from that end all the way through.
yep, it's a really long, yeah, the whole bolt is.
Oh, okay. I was wondering what you were
It's
doing.
massive. Yeah, there's depends on the vehicle and what motor's in there, but there's gonna be stuff in the way here. You just want to make sure that you're not catching anything. If you feel any tension, you know, don't force anything. Yeah, there's usually alternator wires running through here, or usually just a bunch of cables. There's a nice trick for getting it the bolt out or back in. If you're trying to get it out, you can use press down on one end of the washer and get a pry bar on the top side, and as you pry away, it grabs the bolt and moves it. So then if you want to bring it back in, you actually will slide it over against the body and then do the same. It helps speed it through, but you definitely, you know, like I said before, you don't want to, if you feel any tension or not moving at all, don't force it. It should be really nice and easy. Definitely to wrap around the body.
And that'll slowly feed all the way out until it comes out on this side.
Yep, and that should.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
I see it coming out. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, and then again, make sure the cut part is facing away, so you have a gap on between the washer and the bushing.
Okay.
Throw that back on, and then
Okay.
so with these SVC arms, you're gonna have one side that is like a long oval, and then the other side is a rectangle. Rectangle always faces down, and that's to accept these washers on the bushings, or sorry, on the ball joint. This acts as a slide. So
Okay.
as you can, when we do the alignment, we'll be able to set our final camber with this. They also have different settings, so you can get more or less caster out of it depending on your needs. Like go on larger tires and you're too close to the firewall and you're rubbing on the body mount, you can set this at a different angle, and that pushes the tire and the whole spindle forward, but it reduces your caster. But it is good for getting clearance.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you can actually center the wheels in the wheel well
Yep.
doing that as well. Okay.
Yep. But you always either sacrifice or gain caster. So yeah, there's a little bit of drawback depending on the situation, but yeah. So you always make sure that the rectangle is on the bottom to accept that washer there. You know, round washer fits really nice in the top. We've seen people come in with the arms flipped on the wrong side. So then, yeah, they have the square one up here, and yeah, just
that doesn't
I don't
work.
know how people, always end up messing it up, but yeah. So we'll just kind of get it snug for now until I can torque everything, but have it in, feed that through. And there's the other way to tell, like as long as the square is on the bottom, the spindle should go right up to the ball joint, no problem. You know, you shouldn't have to force it anywhere. It'll just line up really easy. So now I'm gonna take our support off, and except for torquing this side's.
All right, so we're on the passenger side right now, and you can see there's this bolt right here, which is actually super long because it goes all the way through. Devin's going to be putting in the upper control arm right now, and you can see him messing with that bolt right now, and he's got to drive that from the right-hand side, which is that side, all the way through until it comes out on the left-hand side right here. So sometimes you can get that in without a lot of trouble, but you want to be careful because there's a bunch of wires and all sorts of stuff right above where his hand is right now. So you don't want to force it. If you feel any struggle or anything like that, you want to stop what you're doing and kind of make sure you're clear. So right now he's working on moving that in.
Yeah, and on this one, there's some rubber hoses that were at the very end of the, like kind of towards the radiator, that the head of the bolt was caught on. So I just had to reach through, push them up and around, and so now it's free and safe to move everything forward. Didn't want to force it and rip a hose off or cut a hole in the hose.
Alright, so now he's using his crowbar here to kind of negotiate, leveraging that washer. He can move that forward slowly until it starts appearing over on this side. And there it is right there. And at this point, put the bolt in, and then as usual, making sure that the cup off the washer is facing out. And so this is the washer we're talking about right now. And this side with the dip has to face outside. So, okay, so mount. So he's mounting the ball joint right now, and just like he was saying earlier, the circular part goes on top, and then the square end goes on the bottom of that. The circular allows you to adjust caster, and then the one on the bottom allows you to do, what was that again, Devin? Alignment?
Yeah, yep. And it'll, let the adjust camber to
Okay.
in and out. And that, for the most part, that's what we use it for. Is to dial in camber. It's an extreme case of bigger tires or durability that we do the caster.
Okay.
But yeah, so we always leave it in neutral, which is just that bottom plate is parallel with the ball joint itself.
So what's left at this point is he'll go through, that's your brake line perhaps, attaching that to the upper control arm and torquing everything down. And that is the suspension system done for the front. Zooming in here, you can see this is what we were talking about. So the divot is on this side right here, and the protruding part actually faces the control arm itself. Same thing with this side. So you've got the divot on this end and the protruding part of the cup on that side. So Devin's just torquing those bolts right now, and it's 85 foot-pounds. Just the factory settings basically is what he mounts or tightens this up to.
And these will be factory here too, but the big, it's a 32 millimeter here. This one you torque to 150 foot-pounds for SVC's instructions.
Okay.
Yeah, and then after we, once I'm done torquing everything, we still need to grease these.
Okay. So 150 for that.
Yep.
Everything else is factory.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
One second.
So what we're looking at here, Devin's going around and he's tightening all these bolts down. Everything gets tightened to factory except for this bolt here at the top, which clearly, because that's SVC, and that gets tightened down to 150 foot-pounds. I believe that's a 31 or a 32 millimeter bolt. Everything else absolutely factory. I think these are like 85 or something like that, but if you consult your manual, you'll be able to verify that. All right, so Devin's doing the driver's side here, And because this is a castle nut, he's going to have to put a cotter pin in that. So what he does is he tightens this all the way up to factory, which is 85 foot-pounds, I believe.
On this side, it's about 50.
About 50?
On the lower, yeah.
Okay. So he tightens that up to 50 foot-pounds, and then he looks for that hole and sees where it's at. So right now it's a little bit off, so he's going to tighten it a little bit more until that hole is exposed. So you don't loosen it to see the hole, you actually tighten it more until you see that. And then you can see him putting in that cotter pin now.
So after installation, these come pre-packed with a little bit of grease already in the ball joint, but we'll need to add more once we're done. I don't know if we'll be able to hear, but you can kind of hear some air squishing in and out. We'll want to add like probably 4 or 5 pumps until the ball joint and the boot are filled with grease to the point where you can't hear any air escaping.
Okay.
And I think we recommend every 2 oil changes at the same time. Just
add a
grease these
little
up.
bit more grease on that.
Yeah, and every 3 or 4 four-wheeling trips too, I think is their recommendation.
Okay.
I thought they had frequency. A way to make it easier too. It will, with the ram automatically comes down when you release all the tension off of it. You want to do take driver's side off first, then passenger, and then driver's side back on first. So driver first always. Some people will remove this bar on the frame side. I find it a little harder to put it back together afterwards.
Okay.
But here, everything like on this side bolts up real nice and easy.
So when do you have to put spacers? At what point of a lift? 8-inch lift, 12-inch lift?
No,
Because I've heard of KDSS spacers.
Yeah, we've done a few here. I'd like to see more of them, and I shall show you why in a second once we get that bar or that mount mounted back up. Because this will contact here. But I think any amount of lift, it would be good to do them, because they definitely help keep the angles of the ram and everything in line, and compensate for the lean that I was talking about. By having that spacer there, it helps counteract it.
Okay. So you would recommend it for just about any lift?
Yeah, I think so. I think
Okay.
I'll come back and torque those. So now, if you see these aren't anywhere close to each other, so I'll get the jack back up under here and compress this side of the axle.
And Devin is moving in that same transmission jack into position here, and when he does that, he'll be able to crank that up so that can make contact, and we can actually put the screws or the bolts into that.
Again, here I'm making sure that it's not coming off the arm as I get closer.
And he just has his hand down here, and what he's doing is trying to make sure that doesn't come off, because it's got a tendency to do that when you're jacking up one side versus the other. So he just kind of keeps his hand on that to make sure that stays in contact.
should be enough for me to.
All right, so now Devin's gonna get in here and try to torque these up. Lowering the jack right now. I'll probably end up getting some spacers for the KDSS system here. They actually, I was speaking with Devin, and they actually recommend that you put spacers in there, so that's something that I'll be looking forward to doing, or looking to doing here in the future.
So, you know, the axle's full of droop, and you can see what the head of this bolt here is always resting on the pan hard bar. Now during normal driving, it's not going to contact at all, but you can see that it has a pretty sharp angle this way. If you were to do the spacers, it will move it away,
Okay.
and you don't have to worry about the contact at full droop. But yeah, it also does help push the ram back up, kind of help keep the vehicle level.
Okay,
yeah,
so
yeah,
when it sits down, it'll stop making contact with that. But
Yep.
if you were off-road and it drooped,
Yep.
that's when that bolt would make contact with that, and that is why you need a spacer
Yep,
for the
yep.
KDSS system.
Yep.